Live cedi stability against dollar expected to be sustained in the coming days as IMF program takes shape and the Bank of Ghana increases market support. Also in this bulletin, Bank of Ghana warns public against doing business with some unlicensed entities that are engaged in the provision of loans through mobile applications. We will be engaging a banking consultant. We have details of these and many others lined up for you. Please stay. Grateful you could join me. I am Pius Kojobaka. Straight to our very first story. The cedi stability against the dollar over the past week is expected to be sustained. Those are the views of some bank treasurers that Joy Business has been engaging. There is more in the following.
The Ghana cedi has seen some firm stability against the US dollar over the past week, but it is not clear for now what were the major indicators that drove the stability over the period. This is coming after the cedi suffered some losses against the American greenback even after Ghana secured an IMF program. But engaging some bank treasurers, they maintain that they don't see any sharp reversals in the coming days. This is based on the fact that the reforms being undertaken by government under the IMF program is taking shape, and that is sending some positive signals to investors. The Bank of Ghana has been on the market over the past days, and there are plans to increase the intervention for businesses as well as the commercial banks. It is based on this development that the bank treasurers are optimistic that the local currency's performance could be sustained in the coming days.
Now, the year-on-year inflation for May 2023 has increased to 42.2% from the 41.2% recorded in April 2023. According to the Ghana Statistical Service, the increase was driven by food and non-alcoholic beverages, which contributed 52.4% to overall inflation. The government statistician, Professor Samuel Kobneni, made the announcement in Kumasi in the Ashanti region.
Social protection 53.4% and food and non-alcoholic beverages 51.8%. All four divisions recorded rates of inflation higher than the national rate of inflation. On a month-on-month basis, keeping in mind that the national month-on-month rate of inflation was 4.8 for the month of May 2023, we again identified 5 divisions that recorded rates of inflation higher than the national average. This was led by personal care, social protection, and miscellaneous items that recorded the highest divisional month-on-month inflation of 7.0%. We turn away from the levels of inflation and from the 13 divisions point of view, identify the divisions that are contributing the most to the rate of inflation that was recorded for the month of May 2023. Across the 13 divisions, top 3 items, namely food and non-alcoholic beverages, housing, water, electricity and gas, and transport, almost contributed 3/4 to the overall inflation, with food and non-alcoholic beverages contributing more than 50% to the rate of inflation that was recorded in May 2023. Specifically, food and non-alcoholic beverages contributed 52.4% to the overall inflation recorded in the month of May 2023. This was distantly followed by housing, water, electricity and gas that contributed 13.1%, and closely followed by transport contributing 9.2% to the overall inflation that was recorded in the month of May 2023. The division that contributed the lowest to inflation in May 2023 was insurance and financial services that contributed 0.1 to the overall inflation for May 2023. We turn to the food inflation, given its dominance in terms of its contribution to the overall inflation. It will be recalled that food inflation contributes, the weight of food inflation is 43.7% to the overall rate of inflation. So we look at the trends in the levels of rate of inflation and the share of food inflation to the overall inflation. Since January 2022, it peaked in January 2023 with a rate of inflation of 61.0%. This is more than 3 times the rate of food inflation which was recorded in January 2022.
One of our headline stories, and the Bank of Ghana has warned the public against doing any form of transactions with some 97 unlicensed entities that are engaged in the provision of loans through mobile application to the Ghanaian public. The Bank of Ghana also cautioned the operators of such platforms to desist from the act or face prosecution after investigations. There's more in the following report.
The Bank of Ghana reiterated the activities of the 97 entities significantly breached customer data and privacy laws, as well as consumer protection requirements and norms with unfavorable implications on the integrity and well-being of their patrons. The central bank assured that it will continue to take action against the entities in collaboration with relevant state agencies to promote the integrity of financial service delivery. It therefore advised the general public to desist from doing business with all unlicensed loan providers. You can visit myjawline.com to take a look at the list of 97 unlicensed entities that are engaged in the provision of loans through mobile applications to the Ghanaian public.
All right, so let's now go to Zoom and speak to a banking analyst, Christian Tichijan, for more on this. Pleasure you could join us on Business Live. And Christian, this is not the first time we are saying the Bank of Ghana issues such warnings. Do you hold the view that the Bank of Ghana it's about time the central bank, prosecute such mobile loan operators to serve as a deterrent rather than basically issuing warnings to the public?
Yeah, good evening and thanks for having me on your program. I think it's important that a dialogue is open with some of these institutions to actually ascertain what might be wrong. For these institutions might have had license expired, and in their bid to have them renewed, they are facing certain challenges that are beyond their control. So for such institutions, and then others who might be facing similar situations, I think there should be some sort of facilitation for them to get their licenses renewed. Of course, there will also be those that are operating without any license whatsoever, and I believe the whip should be cracked on them to serve as a deterrent to others. Luckily, we are having the situation where they rather have their risk assets out there, and so we wouldn't be talking about any deposit losses. Nevertheless, the right thing will have to be done, and if it means shutting them down, I'm afraid it has to be done to ensure that the sanity of the financial sector is actually protected.
Well, some also hold the view that it's about time those accounts are frozen. Do you stand by that?
Yeah, it's doable after some of these avenues that I've already elaborated are explored or exploited. Of course, the recalcitrant ones could be taken through such processes. You see, Bank of Ghana, per the Act 918 of 2016, they've got both the supervisory and the regulatory authority for all banking and non-banking financial institutions. And so if they find anything untoward towards their industry, they can clearly do that.
Beyond the sanctions, there's also been the need for education, looking at how IT is getting sophisticated. Don't you think so?
Yes, absolutely. We are actually in a technology world, and it has formed parts of the fabric of our society. And so you will definitely be left out if you don't keep the pace. But in keeping up with the pace, you should have enough education on its risk, of course. And as much as possible, mitigants should also be built around them, as far as the risk associated with them are concerned, so that everybody will be protected for the ultimate good of the society.
97 of such unlicensed entities operating in Ghana, as we have been told by the Bank of Ghana. Is that not too high a number in your opinion? And does that not show how porous the financial technologies ecosystem really is?
Yeah, admittedly, 97 is quite a huge number, but putting things in proper perspective, does the Bank of Ghana Banking Supervision Department have enough logistics to do all of these monitoring across the length and breadth of the country? I'm actually very doubtful. But I think what they can rather do is to encourage the apex bodies like the Microcredit Association of Ghana, where my good friend Eben is doing a fantastic job making sure all of its members are actually adhering to the rules of engagement. And I think such bodies can be given the needed support to complement the work of the Banking Supervision Department of BoG. That way, wouldn't be they'll be able to reach so many people to ensure that they conform to the rules of engagement, or what Bank of Ghana has actually given them as the rules of engagement. They can actually ensure conformity through that.
Let me pick your thoughts on this. Now, on the recent bank staff illegal transferring of funds, do you think there must be some proper investigations on workers employed by these banks?
Yeah, indeed. With the current practice, I'm aware every employed staff of any bank is taken through a check, especially of criminality. And so I would say the framework already exists. Maybe the process has to be intensified, or to ensure that it becomes more rigorous, to ensure people do not get into that space with that criminal intention or something. So I think that framework exists, but they just have to ensure that it is intensified or made rigorous enough.
Well, maybe probably we need to invest heavily in the level of security at these banks.
Yes, absolutely. It has to be done because it's a very highly volatile environment, and it is risk associated. And so far as there are risks, we should be able to build certain mitigants around it. And so once such mitigants are built, and we ensure that the staff actually conform to some of those risk issues, and they actually go by them succinctly, I'm sure some of those things wouldn't really be happening.
Again, Christian, there are some who argue that really it could be as a result of greed on the part of the workers, or basically they are not paid well.
You see, such matters are of morality and personal values, and so irrespective of how much the person is actually earning, I mean, he'll be corrupt if only he allows himself or herself. And I think it's also important that the bank staff also realize that it's a very risky business environment, and it is for very good reasons that control measures are actually put in place. And so maybe from a business perspective, in your bid to grow your business or to make more money for your bank, you might ignore certain control measures that you could have followed to prevent a lot of such incidents happening. But then in your bid to actually ensure that you grow the business, so far as the practice that you engage in is not one that is sanctioned or approved by the bank, definitely you're going to find yourself at the wrong end of things. So as bank staff, we also have to be very careful to ensure that no matter the pressure that is mounted on you, no matter the targets that you have to meet, you just have to ensure that you go by what the bank actually dictates that you do. And let me cite a typical example of a customer, for example, who holds, let's say, 20% of your deposit portfolio. Let's say he holds about 10 million with you, and he requests for, let's say, 100,000 Ghana cedis. You are at, let's say, Circle branch, and the person lives in Adenta, and he requests for about 100,000 withdrawal. And you valuing the person or considering the person as a high value customer, you want to actually serve the customer. So you just pick 100,000 and you put it in your car to go and deliver to the person before you even take the check to come and draw. In that situation where you are transporting the funds from the banking hall to the customer, if something happens, who's going to be in charge? I'm not saying we have to stick to the old banking where every customer will have to come to the banking hall to do some of these withdrawals, but we can be innovative. But in being innovative, we need to put in certain measures or practice that will also absorb the bank from such risk. For example, if you can let the person sign an indemnity, an email indemnity where he can issue such emails to you and you'll be able to act on it. Then once the money leaves the account, the liability, should there be any challenge or any problem, is actually on the customer, but it wouldn't be on the bank. If we are quite innovative in dealing with customers in that regard, yes, we'll be able to protect the sanity of actually that industry.
All right, Christian, in 30 seconds, what advice would you give to customers seeking for loans? What are some of the lookouts?
Yes, obviously, times are hard. The rates are actually very high. Just because treasury bills are also very high, we should do a bit of window shopping. We should look at all the clauses in the facility agreement or loan agreement. Let's not just be looking out for the interest rates. Let's look out for other charges, including monitoring fees, including processing fees, facility fees, and all of those ones. Once we're able to go through them, then we come to a very good appreciation of the APR, which is the total cost of the facility. Then we'll be able to make an informed decision whether to go for Bank A or Bank B. You might just look out for the interest rates, but at the end of the day, such charges, the additional charges might be more than what you actually anticipated. And that is what brings a lot of conflict normally between customers and then their bank staff.
We are grateful, Christian Tichijan, for your time. He is a banking analyst speaking to us there. Let's stay on issues that has to do with the financial space. And of course, the Institute of Fiscal Studies, IFS, is asking government to take steps to increase revenue from the extractive sector through direct state participation The IFS is urging government to take this move in the mid-year budget review to reflect revenue targets under the IMF program. Speaking at a press conference on Ghana's 2023-2026 Extended Credit Facility Supported Program with the IMF Senior Research Fellow at the Institute, Dr. Sahid Bwache said government can no longer rely on royalty tax approach under concession agreement in the mining sector.
Program's effort to increase government revenue mobilization relies unduly on taxes. As a prior action for the program, many taxes were introduced in the 2023 budget, and more are likely to follow under the tax-centered revenue strategy. Yet, over-reliance on taxation is certain to hurt businesses and industries and ultimately harm the economy's competitiveness and long-term growth potential. Because of this, you have to listen to the next point. No explicit policies in the program that aim to ensure that Ghana follows the footsteps of countries that generate considerable amount of revenue from the extractive sector and use extractive exports to stabilize the city. The government keeps on over-rely on taxes and largely ignoring the extractive sector. Although, in relation to its peers, Ghana's public revenue generation is low and should be expanded. A tax-centered approach is not the way to go. From IFS research, the revenue gap between Ghana and its peers is largely due to the country's relatively poor revenue generation from the external extractive sector, which is the result of leaving the sector in the hands of multinationals through concession arrangement that yield paltry revenue to the state, while the multinationals repatriate billions of dollars in resource rents. For instance, IFS has found that out of the 22.72 billion worth of minerals produced in Ghana from 2015 to 2018, only 1.48 billion, representing a meager 6.5%, was paid as revenue to the government. Imagine that. Over 22 billion, only 1.84 billion, representing only 6.5%, was paid to the government as revenue.
You're still watching Business Live here with me, Pius Kojobaka. Still to come, the Joy Business Van features Santi K, which aims to become a significant international retailer of Ghanaian sandals and slippers. More after. Hello, welcome back. Ghanaian firm Santi K aims to become a global retail brand, enabling shoppers to request slippers and sandals using its channels. The company is changing the way men and women shop for its handmade slippers and sandals. The Joy Business Van interacts with CEO of Kwame Adofori, who founded the business in 2013. That's it for Business Live for today. I am Pius Kojobaka. Let's connect same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.